I was interested in magic when I was about 8 or 9 years old. There was a section in the weekend paper that had magic tricks in it, small tricks, by people I didn't know, tricks I didn't know, but that interested me. And then in about 1943, 44, I saw John C. Green, a magician, which to me was a famous magician. And that made up my mind right there and then. That's what I wanted to do. I'd be a magician. I liked apparatus magic more than I did sleight of hand, because I could build those things, I could make them, and so throughout my life I've sort of favored the illusion, the bigger pieces, the things I could create. When I started magic, I had no money. I was a farm boy. There was no magic shop in the area. There was nothing there. There was nothing, but there were some tools around, and I could always whittle, and I could cut and shape and make things, and that's how I learned to build. And I sort of had a general feeling for apparatus. I had a theory at the time, which I still stick with, and that is that you can take a small trick, build it big into what we call an illusion, and it'll be just as good as a small trick, and more people can see it because it's visible. I remember walking to my first magic shop during the Second World War. I was living in Edmonton, Alberta. There was a building there with two businesses in it. Moody's shaver shop was on one end, and the other side was Frank Herman, was the guy's name, Frank Herman's magic shop. And that was the first shop I saw, and it was the most wonderful thing that could ever happen to me. Well, I saw the guy do things that I couldn't explain. Ravine was a hypnotist, but he did magic as well, and he wanted to do a show, a big show, and so I built for him for quite a while. How did I meet him? I didn't meet him, he met me. Anyway, he visited me way back when he first came to Canada, and he dropped off in Vancouver, and later on he came to Calgary, and he introduced himself to me, and he said, my name is Ravine, I'm a hypnotist, and I'm going to play 1 week at the Palace Theatre. And I thought to myself, this guy's an idiot. I mean, how are you going to play 1 week when most magicians can't make 3 days? And he's going to play 1 week, but I went along with him, and he booked it, and he played 1 week. So I was intrigued by what he was doing, and as he did some mental stuff and memory stuff, and I suggested to him how he could improve some of the things, and he agreed that I was right, and would I do it? And I said, sure. And so I built some of the props that he used, like the chestnut tour and other memory things with jumbo cards, and he was probably the first real commercial person that I built for. Chandelier was a concept that really came from Dale Harney, which used to be a student of mine. And he wanted to build a show that was different than any other show. And somehow he liked the chandelier. He just liked the chandelier itself. So he wanted to know if I could design some illusions with chandeliers. So I did. I designed the substitution trunk, which was like a regular substitution trunk, except at the very end, when the girl steps out of the trunk, instead of him, because he's out already, they open the trunk and the side burst open and two big chandeliers come out the end. So that was the first item. Then the other item was where he would get into a sort of cabaret and get in there, or she would, his assistant, and then the curtain would close and then drop. An assistant was gone, and there was a big chandelier hanging there. And there were other things. There was a vanishing bird cage that changed to a chandelier. In fact, the whole act that he had at the time revolved around chandeliers. But that was an idea that came from Dale Harney. It's what he wanted to do, but he wasn't able to build it, but I was, so I did. There was a trick actually sold by a novelty company where you had a blade fit with your finger in it, and you could go apparently drive it through your finger because it had a blade that permitted you to do that. However, I thought, thinking to myself, you can't have anybody examine it because an idiot would be able to figure out how the heck to do that. So I made up my mind, I'm going to make something that looks as simple as that, but nobody can figure it out. I utilized two different principles in a locking device of the blade that you had to incorporate both of those principles, and no magician ever thinks of that, two principles at the same time. And so that's how it developed. I sold that. Way back in 1945 is when I built my first one. And at that time, I sold that for $5. It was a big price for that time, 1945. Anyway, in time, more and more demand came for it, and I started building by the dozen, done by 50, done by hundreds. And I built them for maybe 8 years and just mass-produced them. And this was a very successful item for me. And to this day, not everybody knows unless you owned one. You don't know how to open this, how to make it work, because of the double principle. I had people all over the U.S. and Europe and England, like in Germany and so on, make copies of them. I actually approached some of the people. There was a well-known dealer in England who was selling this. And I was in England, so I decided to visit him. And I didn't tell him who I was, and I said, "Do you have the Hades finger chopper?" He said, "Oh, yeah." And he reaches underneath the counter and he brings one out. Well, it wasn't one I built because I know my work. And I said, "Well, where did you get that?" "Oh," he says, "we make them." I said, "Who gave you the right to make them?" He says, "Well, why do you ask that?" I said, "Because it's my chopper. My name is Micky Hades." He started saying, "Well, there's a guy that works on a ship, and he saw a magician do it, and he came in here and told us about it. We thought it was a good idea, so we built it." And so, anyway, words spoke both ways, and he finally said, "Okay, we're going to take it off the market," and they did. And so, most of the dealers who copied it did back off and quit copying it, but one in Mexico did not. I had the rights to sell at first, to sell his book and his idea. It wasn't a commercial thing. He didn't commercialize it. Other dealers did. And so when they did that, he finally told me, he says, "I have a brother who is building illusions," and he says, "in Canada, but he can't keep up with it. So if you can, you go ahead. You have my good wishes." And so that's how I got into building illusions. I used to build those by the dozen. In fact, in my book that I'm putting together, that's the title of that chapter. It's called Illusions by the Dozen. And there's a picture of all those zigzags that are in process. And he had a feeling for the country, and he liked to see somebody in Canada making it. So he said, I'd like you to be my agent. So I still have some forms that he had to fill out because you couldn't buy the book or any of the illusions without agreement, and which you had to sign your life away for. Anyway, but a zigzag was very popular. It wasn't the only thing he had, but that at that time hit the magic world with a bang. It was such a great illusion. And some interesting stories are said about it. He came to USA to do a lecture tour, and he was in the car with some of the magicians who were traveling from one place to another, and they all said to him, how do you like the idea that people are stealing your book, your illusion? He said, well, I'm not happy about it, of course. And they said, well, they're all over the place. He said, and just as he was saying that, there was a delivery truck with a zigzag illusion standing on the back of it, passing by. And the guy said, there's one. And he really got irritated by that. So that night when he was doing his lecture, he came out on stage and said, how many of you here have the zigzag illusion? And a whole bunch of hands flew up, They all had the zigzag illusion. He says, and how many of you bought my book? And everybody sank back in the chair. So the idea was that you could build the illusion if you bought the book. If you didn't buy the book, you had no right to build the illusion. Well, Harney looked me up, like so did Jon Kaplan, so did others who I've had a number of others. They weren't as successful, but they looked me up and they heard about me or knew of me, and they wanted to know if I could teach them to do magic. And one of the things about me is that I don't teach sleight of hand. I don't teach tricks. I teach an attitude. In other words, I teach a person to be successful in whatever they're doing. In this case, it happens to be magic, and so I teach them how to sell, how to build a suspense, how to do things, and make them successful so that they can make a living at it. I was working here in Calgary in town, and he saw me working in a number of places and decided he wanted to learn to be a magician. So he asked me if he could become a student, and I said, it depends on what your folks say. Because if your parents don't want it, I don't want to get involved in that. So we had a meeting. I had a meeting with Jon Kaplan's father and mother, and we talked it over. And his father looked at me. He said, you mean to tell me you can tell me that he can make a living doing magic? And I said, why not? And he said, well, who's going to pay him the money? I said, he has to find ways to do it. He's got to pay. Anyway, this is how somebody, his father said, okay, that's fine. If he wants to do it, let him do it. And he says, we'll wait and see what happens. Well, he signed up because I had an agreement. Those guys were under lease. They didn't just come to me and say, show me magic, because I don't do sleight of hand, don't show them little tricks. I teach them the whole way of living as a magician, not of just doing magic, but living as a magician. And so he worked for me for 5 years. And when I say he worked for me, because I started him out by carrying my cases around while I went to do shows. And he learned how to book, how to deal with people, and he knew the business. He didn't just know how to do a trick. He knew the business. And that's where it ended up. Not everybody was successful. I've had 2 or 3 that were bad. They weren't successful at all. I do not teach magic. I do not teach you how to do sleight of hand. I do not teach you how to make moves to fool people. I teach you the principle of magic. Same as you would teach a carpenter how to build. Same way as you would teach a cook how to make fantastic dishes. You teach them the principle of the thing. And once you know the principle, you can do a bad job. People will still like it because you know the principle and you have put into it. It's like telling a joke. Some guys, you can have two guys say the same joke. One guy says the joke, it's hilarious. The other guy says it and everybody says, ugh. You know, it's delivery. It's a matter of understanding what makes it work. So what would I say to a young guy who is coming in? Well, if I was younger, I'd say, come with me, work for me, spend 5 years with me, I'll teach you how to be a magician. At my age, no. I'd say, go find somebody that thinks like me and learn. He can teach you how to do magic. I met a guy from Seattle, Washington, Stephen Minch. And he was very interested in what I was doing, and he said he would like to join the company. And I said, well, you'll have to come and work for me for a year before I'd be interested in doing. And he said, yeah, he'll do that. So he came and worked for me here in Calgary for 1 year, and he learned his business quite well and decided it was time to go back. Now, about that time, there was a shop for sale in Portland, Oregon. And I suggested to him, I said, what do you think if I bought the shop? Would you be my manager? And he said, I'll do it for a year. And I said, well, okay, that's a start. So he started managing the thing, and I moved the stuff to Seattle. We opened up a shop on the 5th floor on Main, and he worked for me for 10 years. 1 year didn't do it. He liked it. He was in to stay with me. And then he broke away and he started publishing his own books, which were called Penguin Magic. And not Penguin, sorry. Whatever. It was a big bird, pecking bird anyway. So he did very well with that, and I think he's winding up now his own business. I had this idea of, I used to build magic and make magic, so I thought other magicians would be interested in that. So I put out the makeup of magic, because in my own sense, I figured the word makeup was the actual physical makeup of magic, which means apparatus. And I put that book out, and it turned out to be a success. Sold more of that book than I did all the other books. 10 years later, I reprinted it called The New Makeup of Magic, because by that time, many new techniques were developed, so I added them to the book and increased it in size and published it again. At that time, I was publishing the magazine called the Hadegram Magicette, and I needed somebody to write for the younger group. So I let them know that I'm looking for an editor for the junior section of the Hadegram. And Doug Henning applied for it, and he got the job, and he did it for a number of years. See? Martin Nash was a very interesting person. He has a very interesting story, but I'm not going to relate that. The thing is, when I met him, he was interested in cards, and he knew of me, and he wanted to know if I could help him. And I said, well, let's see what we can do. And he had just came back from New York, where he met quite a number of magicians there, and he copied the stuff, and he was doing very well. And we got together one evening at one of the magicians' places, and he did some magic. Everybody said, "Oh, that's fantastic! It's wonderful." So everything was fine. But on the way back, when we come in the car, he turns around to me. He says, "Micky, I want you to publish my book." I said, "What book?" He said, "Book. I'm writing a book." I said, "What are you going to have in it?" He said, "What you saw last night." I said, "Not for at least 5 years." He said, "Why?" I said, "Well, the stuff you were showing is not yours. You saw other guys do it. You imitate them, and you do the good job with it. But it's not yours till you have your own things. Develop your own style, your own character, your own effects. Then I'll publish your book." So he wasn't too happy with that. However, he remained my friend. But in the meantime, he decided to publish a book. Now, this is something many people don't know. He published a book called Take It From Me. And it was not big. There was about maybe at most a dozen tricks that he developed. And he tried to sell it, but he was not known. And he didn't know how to sell it. He didn't know, nobody knew who he was. So he didn't do too well with him. So in about 3 years, he came to me. He said, "Look," he says, "you want to buy the rest of these books?" He says, "I don't want them. But he says, I want you to publish a book for me." Now, he said, "I can do this stuff." And I said, "Well, can you write 3 books?" He said, "Why do you want 3? I said, "Look, here's how it goes. In book number 1, they don't know who you are. They don't know what you can do. But it should be good, and I presume it will be. And then they see, here and there, the word will get out that you did a pretty good job. Then you put out book number 2. And people say, hey, this guy must be good. You got number 2 now." So then they get more people interested, and then you publish number 3. And by now you should be made. And he said, "Okay, fine, I'll do it." He said, "I have number 1, I have number 2, but I don't have number 3. I have no idea what I'm going to do." So I looked at his stuff, and I said, "Number 3, he says, I've been playing around with a double lift." Now, there was just going back a little bit, because Martin Nash hit me up one time. He was doing an act, a real magic act, not a special act, a real magic act with his wife, and he was doing various things, and he wanted to do the Vanishing birdcage. And he said, "Will you build one for me?" And I said, "Martin, I can probably build it in about 3 years from now, but I can't do it right now. I've got too many jobs, to finish." So he said, "Well, okay." Anyway, he decided to build it himself. And while he was doing it, he saw it through his finger. And he actually had a crippled finger. And if you look at the videos and you see him, you'll notice that one finger is built like this, and it's frozen in that state. So he had a tough time doing the double lift because of this finger. But he was determined he was going to do it. And he actually did. He did a better double lift than most people with perfect fingers because he had learned how to use that finger. And that's how he got to it. And that was his 3rd book. It's called Any Second Now. I purchased a library from a magician by the name of Harry Harrison, who lived near Frank, Alberta. And Frank is a place where there was a well-known slide. The mountain, one of the mountains, part of it slid down and covered the town below. And actually killed everybody except one child that survived for quite a while. And he worked in that area. He's a coal miner, but he had a library for sale. And I had a station wagon at the time. We drove out to his home, saw the books, and I bought them, and that started me going. Then there was a ex-army guy he lived in Edmonton. He eventually moved to Vancouver, but he had quite a good collection of magic magazines, and I bought those. And slowly it continued in that way until I amassed what I have. Things I built myself, I pride more of those pieces than I do of things I bought, because I built them, so I knew the work that went into it. I knew the expectation that I had for it, and I use them the most. Get friendly with people who collect already and know something about their collection. But in order to be knowledgeable in the business of collecting, you have to learn the history of magic. You have to learn why certain things are more popular than others, why they're made, how they're made, what they created, and why they are famous today, well known today. Magic goes through cycles like everything else, but magic, if you look at the history of magic, you'll notice how it went up in cycles, went down, went up, went down. And I remember before I got into it, everybody say magic is dead, magic is dead. Magic never dies, because you have to understand what magic is. Magic is the idea of beating the odds. Okay, you look at something, and if a guy says, I'm going to put this in my hand, he puts it in. Now, if it's done right, and you know that the item's in there, and he opens his hand and it isn't there, odds are impossible. You can't do that, but he just did. So you have to learn to do the impossible to what appears to be impossible to the viewer. And so, after a while, the old crowd that's bitching about it dies, and the young crowd doesn't know any better. So they see something, and they say, wow, that's good, I want one. It reminds me of an incident. I was at a magic convention, and it was not a very good convention. The sponsors were running it, didn't have things in order. Everything was late, and people were hanging around not knowing what to do. And so a bunch of us were sitting in a hotel, and we're talking about this. I'm saying, it'd be much better if they did this or that, etc. And while we're retching, there's a bunch of young kids, guys about 16, 17 years old, came down the stairs, and they're all excited. He says, this is the most wonderful time I've ever had. I just don't believe it. This is great. This is fantastic. Which just goes to show you the difference was that the older crowd was disenchanted. Younger crowd, hey, there was excitement. It was new stuff. So that's how magic goes up and down. And while it's at the sort of low point now, with the internet and the videos and so on, etc., a new kind of magic is starting up. Not very good. Right now it's not very good, but it will get better as time goes on. And I think it'll come up in 5 years. You'll probably have a pretty successful run with magic. Magic has been good to me. I regret no part of it, and I've never had any desire to quit magic. If I can't make it in one area, I can think of another way, and if I don't make it the other way, I can think of a third way, and so on, etc. There's no limit to what you can do. So I would say that if that's what you want to do, and you really want to do it, you want to dedicate your life to it, then do it.